Good morning, guys. Welcome to yet another recording of your chapters. Thanks to Mr. Wyatt for the wonderful job he did with forms of ownership. I hope that you guys have listened well to it, that you went back to the recording. It is quite an important chapter. Some nice longer questions can come out of there. So make sure that you do what was required from you, especially the table will help you. Sometimes it does look like a lot of facts to remember, but if you do put it in a table like so I ask you to do, it's easier then to come up with advantages and disadvantages, characteristics, and so on. So please make sure that you guys know how to do that. Right, so the next chapter that we're going to look at is chapter 6, on page 61 to 69. So it's a relatively short chapter, but quite an important one. I just did a lesson with the grade 12s again on similar work, um, where they also needed to look at creativity, problem solving, and at the end of the day, come up with strategies to solve problems that's been identified through different problem solving and creativity, creative thinking techniques. So, as I say, it is quite an important chapter. I don't really ask it as a whole. Sometimes they do in grade 12, but what you need to do is this chapter can be used in combination with any other chapter. It can be used with forms of ownership. It can be used with ethics, management, and so on. Because everywhere where you find yourself in one of the 8 business functions, you will be able or you will be required to solve problems, and you solve those problems by being creative. Right. So again, if you look at creativity in a business context, there on page 61, it's basically telling you there about thinking differently, thinking of the same thing, but thinking differently. So we all look at a whiteboard. I see it in the one way to use it the one way, and someone else might see it to use it as another way. You look at a problem, I see it one way, another person see it not as a problem, they see it as a challenge. So people look at things differently, and that's where the creativity comes in. Again, it will eventually give you a competitive advantage, because that's what you want out of this, is you want to get a competitive edge over your competitors and be different, so that your sales can grow. Again, the current affair currently, some people will look at the coronavirus as the end of their business. Other people might look at alternative ways of doing business. I do think that the world is going to have a paradigm shift of what can be done online and what can't. Uh, a lot of businesses might start saying, "Why are we paying 600,000 rand rent for these offices if they've been standing empty for 2 months and business has continued?" So that means that people can work from home. So they might say, "Let's close down some of our office blocks, rent smaller spaces, or give people space to rent small, just a desk and a chair, and therefore they cut down on cost." So you never know what comes out of it. Other people might say, "Oh, geez, this is the end. Our business will never thrive," and. So even something like this coronavirus can make people think differently and creatively about their business. So it will be interesting to see what comes out and what the future holds for us. Obviously, schooling, we're busy teaching you guys online. I don't think the model will work for schooling, obviously, with your sport and the social interaction that you need and our internet speed in South Africa and so on. But businesses, definitely. Some business might say, "Hey, let's go mobile completely, save on cost." At the end of the day, instead of paying 700,000 rand rental, they only pay 100,000 rand rental. So they're saving 500,000 rand a month. That is quite a lot if you add them up. But yeah, so that's an example of current affairs once again, and how creativity can be used. There's just a short clip here of the difference between creativity and innovation. Right? We sometimes think they're the same, but there's a few differences in them. Just waiting for this to load. Right, as I said, internet speed. Okay, start the crisis. Right, just a small way or easier way to understand the difference between creativity and innovation. Right. Obviously, in the business sense, you need to be creative because what we said is you need to get the competitive edge over people. You need to think outside the box. Sorry, video's obviously still playing in the background. Let me just go back there. Close and close, close. We don't have to listen to that. Sorry for that. Right. So obviously, you need to, as I said, get the uh, competitive advantage by thinking outside the box and thinking different than others. That's quite important. But with creativity and problem solving, there's four pillars of creativity. The first one there being on top is fluency. There's not one correct answer. There's never one correct answer or idea. That's why in groups it's always good to have a pessimist in your group, someone that's not always negative, but is negative, and you want that person there because what they will do is they will force you to think differently or think outside the box. Um, Challenge your ideas. Just imagine all 20 of us sitting in a room and we're brainstorming, and all 20 come up with one idea, or the first idea that we get, everybody says, yes, that's the idea. Right? It might work, it might not, but even if it worked, it might not have been the best solution. It might have been a better solution to the problem or better idea. So fluency means that um, there's several different ideas. That's why the creative thinking techniques are good to use different things to do, different tools, right? So that you can come up with different ideas. Next one is flexibility. Very important with anything is you need to look at your concept from different points of views to consider implications of small changes made to current products or services. So again, all it means here is even with creativity doesn't mean coming up with something new from scratch. You might just tweak something here and there with your own product. So, or if you do come up with something new, think ahead in a year's time, 2 years' time, when the demand for the product decreases. Can you tweak something to this product to make it sell again, or to attract more customers again, or to attract the market again? Because that one thing you hate is to have something that's rock solid, works for a year, and after another year must change and go back to the drawing boards from the beginning. Well, you don't want to do that. Third one, very important, is it needs to be unique. It needs to be original. Um, Again, so that you can get the edge over your competitors. Uh, Think of something that hasn't happened before. Think of something um, that's different. And then elaboration is when once a number of different ideas have been tabled, then you elaborate on it. So you look in the finer detail, the depth, and so on. So we go back to fluency, then the first one. A way that you can do it is without shooting ideas down, you literally just write everything down. So Cecil wants to rebrand. So currently their colors are blue. They want to go totally retro, and you say, listen, we want to um, rebrand and we want to go differently. And someone says, no, let's go pink. And then say, ah, that's a bad idea. Instead of saying it's a bad idea, right there, go pink on the board and use the different colors. And at the end of the day, when you elaborate, you pick the three best ones on there or the two best ones or the and then you go into more detail with the different solutions or suggestions and so on. Because at the end of the day, you want to elaborate a little bit more because you might get to elaboration and not able, you go into a little bit depth and then you go, oh, damn, that's not good. Let's go back to our other idea that we had. Um, so you can always go back to. So that's why elaboration and fluency goes hand in hand together. So if you're not fluent, you can't elaborate on more than one. And again, it will waste time and effort because you need to know when to make quick decisions when it comes to creativity. Otherwise, someone else might think about it. Right. Um, so that's the pillars or the pillar approach to creativity. The Scamper is a technique. It's a physically a technique that is being used. You need to know what each letter stands for, substitute, combine, adapt, magnify, put to other use, eliminate, or rearrange. The book uses a little bit different words, but they might mean the same. So, in short questions, we can give you the Scamper, leave out the S, the A, the P, and the R, and say complete the acronym. Or we can say by means of the Scamper technique, come up with a new idea. Right, I'll show you now this video. It explains it quite well what the Scamper technique or method of solving a problem means. Um, so yeah, let's look at the video and it will explain a little bit better. Right, so that's a good example how. Let's close that again. So that's a good example of how Nestle has used the scamper technique, something simple like a Smartie or the brand, or yeah, the Smarties, how they took it to the next level and used it in different ways. Yeah, so it's a technique that they would have used. Um, and again, what's happening is their product stays the same, the concept stays the same, but it's all different. It's thinking outside the box. So again, with Easter and with Halloween even, and with other events, they can adapt their um, product in such a way. So if you think about flexibility, one of the pillar approaches of creativity is Smarties was flexible. They could use it in a different way as they used with the scamper. They used the scamper technique to show their flexibility. Right. So again, that's a technique, as I said, that businesses can use to get the upper hand and the competitive advantage. Um, then again, another technique is the force field analysis. Um, Basically, that's the driving forces and restraining forces that they're talking about. Is at the end of the day, or I'll get to that. So what a force field analysis is, it's forcing you to look at, as I said, the positives and the negatives. Um, is what is good to go with um, Smarty eggs, and what's the negatives of going with Smarty eggs. So if you just use the Smarty example, so every single time they went for a new idea, you would go, what is the driving force and restraining forces? But before you get to obviously define the problem, um, define the change objective. What do you want to achieve by changing the Smarties to something else? What is your end goal? Why do you want this to happen? Um, so it says that the business will define and describe the desired outcome or the goal it will be working towards. Why? What's Cecil's goal of rebranding? Why do we want to change our colors now? Um, Maybe they define the problem that there's other competitors that's got the same color, right? So we want to be different. Or you might say that the color that we use was discriminative. We want to have a more inclusive color that resembles more than something, or something like that. And again, now you're going, so what's the positives and what's the negatives? Right, so that's the push and pull factors. And then we talk about the driving forces and restraining forces. What is driving us towards the rebranding? What is holding us back? And again, if the positives outweigh the negatives, then it's a good thing. If the negatives outweigh the positive, you might have to either go back to the step one or step two, because maybe you haven't defined the problem correctly. Maybe you haven't come to a clear conclusion yet of what the problem actually is. Right? And then at the end of the develop a change strategy. And the strategies we'll look at next year, but that is got to do with, for instance, you losing your market share uh, is one of the you're defining the problem, and your objective is that you want to get more market share, or you want to diversify or whatever. And a petrol station will then combine with Woolworths, and like they've done. So Engine have combined with Woolworths because they're getting more clients now. So people felt that people drove past them because they didn't have a convenience store. So let's have a convenience store, right? So that's the change objective, was to get more foot traffic, and they developed a combination or joint venture with um, Woolworths. So that's an example of a change strategy. The strategies we look at next year more in more detail, but that's a prime example of Engine was losing customers. Compare was teaming up with BP. They realized they're falling behind the eight ball here. What can we do? Let's combine with Woolworths. Good quality brand, Woolworths. So the quality of the Engine petrol is then associated with a good retailer. So again, that would have been all the driving forces towards that, and they would have done that. The negative might have been if it's expensive or whatever, but the positive outweighed the negative. So that's a force field analysis. You're forcing a decision by looking at all the different alternatives. But again, not everybody is creative. Obviously, if you ask me now to be creative now, I will tell you that I am the least creative at the moment. Obviously, with where we find ourselves at home and a little bit more tired in front of a computer all the time. We listening to all the negatives on the news about the coronavirus and what is happening. So we're not that creative. Um, so there's certain obstacles that stands in the way of being creative. So you as a manager needs to be aware of when do you actually have your brainstorming sessions? When do you go for a weekend away to do planning? Is it a good thing to go away for a weekend? Um, do people these days gravitate towards it? Again, you would know if we take you on a school camp. Why must we go on camp? Why must we do this? Why must we do that? I don't want to go on the journey. Don't want to do this. So it's not always good to take people away. Where in the past maybe it was a good way. So again, managers need to be aware of the obstacles of creative thinking. The problem is there's only one correct answer. A lot of us think like that. Um, is and the big thing, the last one there is linked to this. I'm not creative. Bars, you know, in the class, who's creative, who thinks they are creative. I'm guarantee you that there would be people that said, well, I can't draw, I don't do art, I don't do this, I'm not creative. That's not necessarily true, right? You can be creative in your thoughts, and someone else in the group will take your thoughts and put it on paper. So it's not necessarily that you need to put pen on paper. Your thoughts can also be creative. I always say that's good why in a group there's guys and girls in a group. Guys, we tend to think these big plans and, but we don't follow through with the plans and forget about it and so on. Where the ladies in the group, the women, they're more analytical and they'll actually take your ideas and put it into practice. So that's also good when you come to team selection is make sure that you don't only have thinkers in the group, you've got doers in the group as well. Remember in grade 10, we did the whole team role, that Belbin theory on teamwork where you have your coordinator and the doer and the thinker, the caregiver, the carer, and so on. You need all these different roles because otherwise you're going to have only one correct answer to everything. And that we need to get out of our system. Again, the school system probably itself leans towards this one answer, true or false, either one or the other. Match column A or column B, either the one or the other. A, B, C, or D, multiple choices. It's one of the four, right? So there's only one correct answer. Where the nice thing of our paper two that we're doing in business, this is where there's not one correct answer to everything. You can ask Mr. Why did we mark your essays? 27 of you in a class. We can get 27 different responses with the same content, but your ideas will be different, right? Because you think different. And that's the beauty of our paper two is that allows you to think creatively. Where our normal paper one, either right or wrong, right? And that's probably a product of a bad system is we're making people less creative because there's only one correct answer, or we think there's lack of sleeping. And as I said, now if you ask people now to be creative today at 25 plus 12, you'll say, "Tell me to go fly a kite," because it's not that easy, right? Because we're all tired, overworked. This online thing is taking the toll. So to think creatively now, how to do this better, isn't a good idea because we're all tired. So we're not going to come up with good ideas for that. Routine thinking or logical thinking. Um, what that means is, again, it says the routine thinking or logical thinking is important when decisions are made about which idea is implemented. But when ideas are generated, logic may be overrated. But again, if we come back to fluency, I think, but that's not reasonable. That's not logic. Don't give that idea. You never know until you actually elaborated on it. So don't overestimate the of non-routine and non-logical thinking. Because the non-logical thinking might be the one that's correct. Uh, don't scratch where if it has an itch, it works. Why change? Um, Problem is, by the time it itches, someone else have itched before you and they change before you. So if we don't constantly think of something differently in your product development, and say, well, my phone's working, why change? If you take Nokia, for example, Nokia thought, well, all I'm going to change is I'm going to let my snake go through the wall and people are going to still buy my Nokia phone. At the end of the day, look where they are today compared to Apple and Samsung and Huawei taking some of the chunks as well. Right? Nokia for their phones, obviously they've got other products, but phones they out the market because they thought, oh, we don't have to be innovative, we don't have to change. Why change? It's working. Why do something different? And they're behind the pack at the moment when it comes to phones because S20 or whatever has just been launched. S10 is not even a year old, um, but yet they've got a new one. So change the whole time. That's creativity. Um, I don't have time. Again, as I said, people think that they don't have time to do it because it takes so long. Um, also, a big problem if it's not my idea, it's probably not a good idea. We all want to be vangat about that. That's my idea, instead of celebrating other people's ideas. And that stops creativity because you might shoot people's ideas down and shoot down their creativity because it wasn't your idea. But, and as we already said, I'm not creative is a problem as well. Right, so these are obstacles that stands in your way of being creative. So it's the challenge of the manager to get rid of these obstacles and making sure that we get past this. Right, and then the big thing that's quite known to or relevant to South Africa, but also with any country, is indigenous thinking. Little is lekker there. You can see there, people are thinking what works for us, works for us. But if we have a braai advert of wood going, people being sociable about around the braai fire and so on. Again, you even when you see the advert, you can smell the fire through the through the TV, and you can associate with that. Uh, but have that advert somewhere overseas, folks will say, "What the hell? These oaks are burning down the forest with all that wood. What are they doing?" Because they used to a barbecue either on gas or briquettes or whatever. So they're not used to that. So our local way of thinking will not work um, overseas, and vice versa. Right? We mustn't try and implement other people's things here in South Africa. That's why now, with if you think about the guy that came in a conversational assembly spoke about Shell, why they bringing in local knowledge and with transformation, it's not just a group think that's happening. There's more people with knowledge. Different stories are being told. Stories that was kept quiet because of apartheid that they couldn't tell. Right? You've got a different target market that you need to appeal to. Again, something that bright fire that I was just talking about, and watching sport and having a cold drink while watching the sport is probably not appealing to everyone in South Africa. Right? So you need to know that your adverts that you do, or the products that you come out, you can't just use a braai in South Africa as that's what South Africa is. For other people, that means nothing. For them, a braai means nothing. Right? For them, sitting around quietly chatting amongst friends is more important and more sociable than sitting around a fire. So that's what indigenous thinking is you need to be aware of the people around you, uh, because who's your target market, not the overseas market. Obviously, if you export, a different story, because then you need to change and adapt maybe your packaging, the way your colors that you use, and so on for their indigenous thinking, right? So that's part of creativity is getting insight from a particular group of people, that because you might have a group think on group one way of thinking because of your upbringing, but it's not always relevant to other groups of society, especially in South Africa with us being such a diverse and magnificent country. um, Things doesn't work all time that works at somewhere else. Right, so yeah, that's the creativity chapter. uh, and again, as I said in the beginning, the Scamper technique can be asked as a question. The force field analysis can be asked with those 5 steps and so on. But even if this isn't asked as a question, please use it in paper two. Use the indigenous way of thinking. Use creativity, obstacles around it, force field. Um, Use the Scamper technique, even if they don't ask it. And that's the beauty of this. Next year, we'll go into a new chapter that's got more techniques, drill down analysis, decision tree, um, value chain analysis, pros and cons chart. I mean, that's easy. You know what that is. You've got the balance scorecard we'll look at. So it's all different creative ways of solving problems. And at the end of the day, come up with strategies because that will give you the competitive edge. So, gents, that is chapter 6. Your homework is additional activities. And I think all of it, number 1 to number 10, right? Do that on a piece of paper. I'm sure we'll go through you guys with it in the next lesson or two. He'll probably be in contact with you. So yeah, we can go through this. So you can do this afternoon. We'll probably go through this on Wednesday. All right, gentlemen, I hope that you enjoy chapter 6. And that is me for today. Stay safe out there, stay home, and wash your hands. Have a good day.